All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Everyone, welcome to Empowering Villages webinar series, Avoiding Cyber Scams. This is co-hosted by the Village to Village Network, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the Federal Trade Commission. My name is Ari Lazarus, and I'm a consumer education specialist with the FTC's Division of Consumer and Business Education Division. I'm joined by Lisa Schifferly from the Office of Older Americans from CFPB, and two members of the Village community, Wendys Edgar from the Arlington Neighborhood Village in Arlington, Virginia, and Nicoles Schaefer from Sharing Active Independent Lives in Madison, Wisconsin. Before we get started, a quick reminder to please keep yourself muted. And if you have questions during our talk, please put it in the chat. We'll be having a question and answer session at the end. Okay, so today we're gonna walk through a few different topics relating to cyber scams. First, we'll start by going over some cybersecurity basics that can keep your accounts and devices secure. Then we'll jump into some examples of cyber scams, including online dating scams, tech support scams, ransomware, and more. Then we'll be joined, like I said, by two Village members, Wendy and Nicole, who will speak about their own experiences and those of fellow Village members in combating cyber scams and how they protected themselves. We'll wrap up with some free resources and we'll talk about how you can use them in your own villages. And with that, let's get started. Okay, so understanding cybersecurity basics is important to keeping your information and your money safe from scammers. So today we'll go through a few cybersecurity basics that can help keep your accounts and devices protected. So first, and this is one of the biggest tips that we give, is to update your software. You're gonna wanna keep your software, including your operating system. That means OS or Windows, the web browsers you use to connect to the internet, and your apps up to date to protect against the latest threats. Sorry, I think there's some background noise. Please keep yourself muted. Okay, thank you. Most software can update automatically, so make sure to set yours to do so. Outdated software is easier for criminals to break into. Companies are constantly pushing out patches to help fix those vulnerabilities, but you can only get the protection if you download the updates. And then second is to back up your files. So no matter how well you keep your system protected, no system is completely secure. So you're gonna want to copy your files to an external hard drive or cloud storage. And we recommend doing that once a week. And that makes it so if your computer is attacked by malware, you still have access to your files. Okay, and for the third tip, using secure passwords. This is one that I think we've all heard before. That means 12 characters, a mix of uppercase and lowercase numbers, uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. You're gonna wanna avoid common words, phrases, or information in your passwords. And then for accounts that support it, you're gonna wanna turn on multi-factor authentication. That requires both your password and an additional piece of information. That second piece could be a code sent to your phone or a random number generated by an app or a token. And this protects your account even if your password is compromised. Okay, next is securing your home network. So you're gonna wanna activate encryption. Encryption scrambles the information you send over the internet into a code so others can't access it. It's the most effective way to secure your network. Your computer, router, and other equipment should use the same encryption. And then lastly, you want to assume that public Wi-Fi is unsecured, meaning that other users on the network can see what you see and send. So you're gonna wanna avoid using Wi-Fi to access personal or financial information. But if you're on the go and you need to access those accounts, we recommend using mobile data. For now, I'm gonna turn it over to Lisa, who will give some examples of cyber scams that we should look out for. Lisa?
Thanks so much, Ari. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Schifferly, and I'm a senior policy analyst with the CFPB's Office for Older Americans. So thanks to the Village to Village Network for inviting us to be here today. Like Ari said, I'm going to talk about some cyber scams because we know that research shows that recognizing scams makes people less likely to lose money to them. So today we're going to talk about 4 common cyber scams to give you some tips on recognizing them and avoiding them. And these are tips you can pass on to others in your community. We're going to talk about online dating scams, which is one of the scams with the highest dollar loss for older adults. People lose tens of thousands of dollars to these scams. We're also going to talk about tech support scams, which are usually a lower dollar loss scam, but they're one of the most frequently reported scams by older adults, so it's a good one to know about. And then finally, we'll talk about mortgage closing scams and investment scams, both of which may be particularly harmful to older adults who may be at risk of losing their homes or retirement savings right when they need them the most. So let's start with online dating scams. These happen when you meet someone online, maybe through a dating app or maybe through a regular social media platform, and then they start what seems to be a relationship with you. But then the kicker is that they ask for money, often either for a medical procedure or for travel to visit you. And they often want you to wire the money or send it by prepaid card, or they want access to your bank account. So if you know someone who's been involved in a romance scam, maybe there's someone else in your village or in your family who's been involved, you probably understand that these scams can really pull on people's heartstrings and make it particularly difficult to convince a friend or family member that it is in fact a scam. If you don't know someone who's been involved in one of these scams, let me just take a minute to tell you a story that may help you understand how this scam really can happen to anyone. This is a story that a woman who testified before the Senate Committee on Aging recently told about her experience. And she said that she was a widow who was not looking for love, but she got a Facebook request from a man who liked dogs and gardening like her. So they started chatting online. And then eventually he had his kids start talking to her and emailing her. And she had never had kids of her own. So she really liked that they were calling her mom. And then one of the daughters asked for money for period supplies because she said she was embarrassed to ask her dad. So this woman sent a gift card to the daughter for supplies. Then she started getting additional requests from the children and from the man for gift cards to be sent to them for various reasons. But she didn't start suspecting anything yet. He even showed her his bank account with millions of dollars in it. So she thought that he was for real. Then he planned a visit, but when he was supposed to come, she got a call saying that he was stuck in customs and she needed to wire $20,000. So that's when she realized she really couldn't do it and that something was up. Unfortunately, she had already spent all of her husband's life insurance money. And once she recognized the scam, she was not only giving up all this money she lost, but also the life that she thought she was going to have. So, what are some ways to recognize an online dating or romance scam? The big tip off is asking for money, especially for travel or emergencies. Also, think about how they're asking you to pay. If they're asking for wire transfer or prepaid cards, like in that scenario, that's a red flag. Or if they want access to your bank account or credit card accounts. So, to protect against online dating scams, here are some tips to share. First, don't send money or give access to your accounts to someone you've never met in person. Also, limit what personal financial information you share with a new love, especially online, and limit what information you share online generally because the scammers can take information from your profiles and try to make their scam more believable. So on the next slide, you'll see a tool that we have that you can use to share knowledge about these romance scams in your community. This is what we call our fraud prevention placemat, and you can find it at consumerfinance.gov/placemats. The CFPB offers a variety of free fraud prevention placemats, handouts, and activity sheets on how to recognize and avoid common scams, and this is one of them. They were originally designed for meal providers like Meals on Wheels, but you can use them as posters or other things. You can get them for free in bulk online in English and in Spanish. So we'd encourage you to check these out and share them in your community. And now I'll turn it back to Ari to talk about tech support scams.
Great, thank you. So like Lisa said, now to pivot to tech support scams, which, as I'll explain momentarily, is definitely a scam to pay attention to for older adults. Okay, so tech support scammers want you to believe that you have a serious problem with your computer, like a virus. They want you to pay for tech support services you don't need or fix a problem that doesn't exist. Tech support scams happen a few different ways, but one of the main ways they do is through urgent pop-ups. They might look like an error message, like this from your operating system or antivirus software. The pop-up might even use logos from trusted companies or websites to look real. But if you get a pop-up like this, don't call the number. Real security warnings and messages will never ask you to call a phone number. And Lisa's going to go into some more details about how tech support scams and how they work. But I just wanted to share this example and share some data on how prevalent this scam is, especially for older adults, and then end with a video that shows a first-person narrative of someone who experienced a tech support scam. So tech support scams are a big deal for older adults. You'll see here that this shows the loss reports by age and fraud type, and tech support scams are hitting folks over 60 really hard. Folks over 60 are nearly 5 times more likely to lose money than those in the 20 to 59 range. And those losses aren't small. In 2020, folks over 60 lost over $37 million to tech support scams. And all of this to say, this is definitely a scam that's worth paying attention to if you're an older adult or you're working with older adults. So before I turn this over to Lisa, I wanted to share a video on someone who experienced a tech support scam. I really like this one because it's a first-person narrative of someone who experienced this type of scam and how he really kind of took in the message of how important it was to talk about this with other folks, the pass it on message that I'll talk about a bit later. But if you like this video or any of our videos, they are in the public domain, so you're free to share them through your newsletters, on your social media accounts, etc. So please enjoy.
My name is Don Holmes. I live in Sun City West, Arizona. In this community, we're all seniors. After you move in here, even if you don't know anybody, you get to know other people you enjoy doing things with. I use a computer predominantly for email and to get the news. One day, a thing pops up and kind of blocks the screen and says, you've got all kinds of viruses in your computer. The design of the pop-up had a Microsoft logo on the top, and they had a number. And I couldn't get rid of this thing on the screen. Turned the computer off, turned it back on, still there. So I called the number. They identified themselves as Microsoft. I had no feeling that there was anything wrong.
Tech support scams are real, and they're causing enormous consumer injury, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's just based on the FTC's own law enforcement work. Just like Mr. Holmes, a lot of people are getting pop-ups on their screens, and often they claim to be associated with a company such as Microsoft or Apple, giving them lots of credibility.
They told me they would clear what they considered to be malware in there. In order to clear it up, they needed to get into my computer and have my control of the computer turned over to them. So I gave them my password. They went in, the thing came off of the screen. When I went back to my computer the next day, I couldn't access my files.
You'd never let a stranger into your house. Don't let one into your computer. If you get a pop-up, don't click on a link. If you get a phone call from someone who says your computer's security is at risk, don't listen to them. Stop, take the time to talk to a friend, talk to a family member.
When this happened to me, I was a little bit embarrassed. I mean, I consider myself fairly alert, but I was targeted and I was scammed. I didn't really want to talk about this, but I realized that if I didn't talk about it, that if I didn't file the complaint with the Attorney General, that if I didn't file a complaint with the FTC, that I would have shrunk into myself. And by talking about it, by talking to all my friends,
They're not amateurs, Don.
I began to realize that they also started talking and they started indicating that they had experienced similar things. That kind of community, that kind of exposure, it's not an embarrassment. It's just something that happens when you're a senior. You have to talk about to other seniors. What I would suggest is contact the FTC. They have a website. You can fill out a complaint online. We can be empowered with your family, your friends, and other people within your community to try to put a stop or at least protect ourselves from these kinds of scams.
Great, thank you. All right, now I'll hand it over to Lisa.
Thanks so much, Ari. And as everyone saw from the FTC video, this type of scam really can happen to anyone. And it's also really important to report and to talk about it so that other people can recognize and avoid the scam. You probably noticed during the video some of the red flags of the tech support scam. So those include if you get an unsolicited call from tech support saying they need to remote in. They could just be trying to trick you into buying a useless software package. Also, if you get a pop-up telling you to call tech support or an unsolicited email with a link to click on, those are red flags of the scam. Like Ari said, don't call that number if you get a pop-up. So to guard against these tech support scams, here are some tips to pass on. First, don't give control of your computer to someone who calls you out of the blue. Like Ms. Greisman said on the video, you don't let someone into your house. Don't let them into your computer. Once they get on there, think about what they could get. If you've done your taxes on there, your banking on there, they may be able to get into all sorts of personal or financial information if they get into your computer and have access to it. Also, don't click on links in unsolicited pop-ups or emails because they can download malware, which can take information from your computer. And finally, keep your antivirus software up to date. Like Ari talked about at the beginning, that helps guard against these scams and a whole variety of other online scams. And you can think about setting your antivirus to automatically update if you're not sure how to update it regularly. That's a good tip. Now on the next slide, you'll see another one of these fraud prevention placemats. I showed you the one on online dating. This is one on online safety. So this is part of the placemat series. And it has advice like some of the tips that Ari shared at the beginning, like locking your devices and using strong passwords, knowing the red flags of scams so you can avoid them and be less likely to lose money to them, and limit what personal information you share online. Again, you can get these, next slide, please. You can get these at consumerfinance.gov/placemats, and the Play It Safe online placemat is actually one of the most popular, most ordered government publications. We just learned last week that it came in #2 to the Pocket Guide to the Grand Canyon South Rim. So that's pretty exciting for a consumer education publication. So I would encourage you to check it out. And I will hand it over to Ari now to talk about phishing. Ari, are you still there?
Yes,
the slides stopped advancing.
Yes, sorry. I'm here.
If you can show people the Play It Safe online placemat, and then we can move on to phishing.
Oh, the last slide didn't show? Hold on. Right there, right?
It's not showing, Ari. You may have to stop share and then reshare.
Oh, I wonder if it's okay. Let me turn off.
I still see the tech support scams one.
I think it's maybe the video clip setting that I had on.
There it is. So this is the Play It Safe online placemat that I was talking about before that you can order at consumerfinance.gov/placemats. It's a great way to get some tips about online safety and, spread along the information that you're learning in this webinar to other people in the community.
Great. Yes. Sorry about that. It was showing on my screen.
No problem.
Okay, so now let's turn to another common online scam, phishing. So you probably know how phishing works. It's when a scammer uses fake emails or texts or copycat websites to get you to share valuable personal information like account numbers, social security numbers, or your login IDs and passwords. It happens when you get a email or text that seems to be from someone you know or asks you to click on a link or give your password, bank account, or other sensitive information. And phishing scammers lure their targets into a false sense of security by claiming to be from familiar, trusted, established, legitimate companies. They may even use their logo to make it more believable, or they could pretend to be a friend or a family member. Phishing scammers make it seem like they need your information or someone else's quickly, or something bad will happen. They might say your account will be frozen, you'll fail to get a tax refund, your boss will get mad, even that a family member will be hurt, or you could be arrested. In short, they lied to get you to give you information. So here's an example of a phishing email, and it shows just how sophisticated they can be. This one is spoofing the World Health Organization, and they're claiming that they have a document with safety measures for you to download. This is one that would have been at the beginning of the pandemic, but because it's pandemic related, it kind of has that baked in urgency that we often see with phishing scams. And here they're telling you to download safety measures, which is likely some kind of malware that will either damage your computer or allow access to your personal files, or both. So how can you avoid phishing? The first thing is to check it out. You're going to want to look up the website or phone number for the company or person behind the text or email. But you're going to want to make sure that you're getting the real company and not about to download malware or talk to a scammer. Second is to talk to someone. This is a big tip we give in general when you're unsure about something, is to just pause, call a friend, call a family member, and talk through the situation and see if they might help you kind of figure out if the request is real or a phishing attempt. And then lastly, making a call if you're not sure. So this one is, picking up the phone and calling the company who sent you the email. But you're going to want to make sure and not use any of the information you got in that email, right? So you're going to want to, if it's from a bank, you're going to want to grab your debit card and find the number on the back of the card, or go to that company's website and find their number yourself, and see if it really was them trying to reach you. Okay, so next I want to talk about ransomware. You may have heard about this type of attack from the news since it's been getting more attention lately, and we'll start with how it works. So how ransomware works is you'll get an email that looks legitimate, but with one click on a link or one download of an attachment, it locks you out of your system. It turns out that link downloaded software that holds your data hostage, and then the attacker asks you for money or cryptocurrency to get your information back. You've probably heard about ransomware attacks affecting organizations' computer systems, but ransomware can attack anybody's computer. So it's good information to know for your own personal devices as well. So how can you avoid ransomware attacks? One of the best ways, again, is to keep your software updated. So you're going to want to download security updates as soon as they're available, no matter what operating system you use. Like I said, hackers are constantly looking for security gaps, and companies are trying to close those gaps, but you only get that protection if you download those. And as Lisa said, you can also set your software to update automatically a lot of the time, and that can really make it a lot easier. Second is to back up your important files. So from tax forms to family photos, you're going to want to make it part of your regular routine to back up your files. And then when you're done backing up, you're going to want to log out of the cloud or unplug your external hard drive so that the hackers can't encrypt those too if you do end up in a situation with ransomware, so that your backups are separate and secure. And then lastly, you're going to want to think twice before clicking on links or downloading attachments and apps. Ransomware is often downloaded through phishing emails, but you can also get it from visiting compromised websites or through malicious online ads. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Thanks, Ari. And phishing and ransomware are really important to keep in mind as we talk about the next two types of scams, the investment scams and the mortgage closing scams. The mortgage closing scam is actually a type of phishing scam. But first, I'm going to tell you about investment scams. And after saving a lot of hard-earned money for retirement or other important life goals, nobody wants to lose their money to investment scams. Now, the way that scammers do these types of scams is they might take advantage of your trust or inexperience, or they may even take advantage of savvy investors. And this is not just a scam that affects rich people. I've heard about investment scams that affect middle income people who are investing in coins. One woman said that her dad used to collect rare coins, and so she tried to invest in coins, but they ended up being a scam and not really worth what she thought they were. So they may ask you to put all your money into a supposed no risk investment, or take your money and say, don't worry, I'll take care of things. Sometimes they can even be someone that you know from your neighborhood, your community, or your faith group. So you naturally trust them more, and then they take advantage of that trust. Or you may even learn about a supposed financial advisor through a phishing scam, like the phishing scams that Ari just talked about. So on the next slide, you'll see some red flags to look out for to recognize investment scams. And those red flags, next slide please, are if someone is pressuring you to act quickly before it's too late, if they claim their results are guaranteed or no risk, that's another big red flag. And also if they say, leave everything to me, just give me your money and don't worry about things, that's a big red flag for a lot of types of scams. If they won't explain their payment structure, maybe there's something in it for them. And if they ask you to put all your money into one investment, that's also a red flag. If you think of the old adage, don't put all your eggs in one basket, that can apply here. So to avoid investment scams, the big thing with a lot of scams is don't let anyone rush you. Take your time and do your own research. You can check the background of a broker or brokerage firm at finra.org. The Securities and Exchange Commission also has a place where you can check into financial advisors. And it's also good to ask any potential financial advisor what your recourse is if you have a problem and how they're paid. For example, do they get a share if you invest in certain products, or do they get a salary that's not affected by what you invest in? You want to use someone whose financial advice is not directly affected by their pay structure. Now on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about mortgage closing scams. These can happen when you're buying a new home, maybe you're downsizing in retirement, or if you're refinancing your current home, maybe to age in place. So these are a type of phishing scam. What we know is that scammers are increasingly taking advantage of home buyers during the closing process. And through a sophisticated phishing scam, they try to divert your closing costs and down payment into a fraudulent account by confirming or suggesting last-minute changes to your wiring instructions. And they often make it look like the email is coming from your agent or settlement attorney. So the day of or the day before closing, you'll get an urgent message saying, the instructions have changed and wire your money to this place instead. Of course, you know, for most people, buying a home is most of their money. So if you lose all that money by wiring it to a scammer, it can really be very devastating. And these schemes often appear as legitimate conversations with your real estate or settlement agent, and they could cost people their life savings. So how do we recognize these scams? On the next slide, you'll see some red flags. First, beware if you get calls or emails with last-minute changes to wiring instructions. That's how these scams work, especially if they ask you for financial information by phone or email. And probably most importantly, call back your agent or settlement attorney to verify any changes to wiring instructions before sending money. And like Ari said, don't call back the number that they give you. Look up the number that you know to be correct for your agent or your settlement attorney. Some other safeguards for these scams is the CFPB actually has a mortgage closing checklist that can help you walk through all the things you should do if you are closing on a mortgage. Also, it's good to call and verify instructions before wiring any money, and talk to two people about the closing process, both the realtor and the settlement agency. That's like a double check to make sure you're not being scammed. Now, what can you do if this type of scam happens to you? First, contact your bank or wire transfer company immediately and ask for a wire recall. Reporting the error as soon as possible can increase the likelihood that you'll be able to recover your money. It's also important to file a complaint with the FBI, which you can do at their Internet Crime Complaint Center, which is found at ic3.gov. So taking a few important steps ahead of your closing, you can protect yourselves and your loved ones from some of these mortgage closing scams. So these are good ones to share with your kids and grandkids too, if you're not closing on a mortgage right now. So next, I will turn it over to Wendy Edgar at the Arlington Neighborhood Village to talk about some of the scams she's seen recently. And then after that, you'll hear from Nicole Schaefer from Sharing Active Independent Lives, or SAIL, to talk through some examples she's seen. Thank you both for joining us. Wendy, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Lisa. You know, I feel so sympathetic to the guy in the video, which is I'm sharing my story mostly so you can sit there and say, I know somebody who almost, and I want to emphasize almost, got suckered in. So Ari, if you could go to the next slide, I'll just offer the example. I was recently, you can see it started out on September 8th, and in my car, so I was reading this on my phone when I was driving. How many different things could I do wrong in this example? But it was from someone who I thought I knew, very reasonably in the summer, saying I'm in North Carolina. I just got back from the foot doctor. I slipped when walking to a car. Next thing I knew, I broke my femur, blah, blah, blah. Are you busy? I need help from you today. I got sucked in right away. That seemed to me to be a very reasonable statement from somebody based on the email address that I thought I knew. So I immediately, and you can see this, I responded right away with, here's my schedule. Can I help now or at 6? Expecting to hear back what he needed. Well, thank God what I heard back was he wanted me to get him a Google Play gift card from any store around me. Ding dong, ding dong. Obviously, as soon as I saw that, I knew it was a scam. I went back and looked at some of the email addresses that had been used. And, oddly enough, the email address changed slightly between the first message and the second message. We've blanked them out so you don't have to see them now. But I think all I want to share with everybody was that, even one of us, other village staff on the phone right now, we can get sucked in. As many trainings as I've been through, as many times as I've heard this message, the first one I got seemed perfectly reasonable. I was reading it on my phone. I was reading it while I was driving. And I was, sucked in, but the Google Play card was a dead giveaway. Ari, you want to go to the next one? This is another one that we got. And this one actually, much like Ari and Lisa explained today, scared me somewhat. This was an invoice that was being sent to me to pay for an item. And as I looked at it, what the issue to me was, we were buying a Dell PowerEdge T340 server tower. That was a real thing we were buying. There had been other communications that had gone back and forth, in our email system, talking about the fact that we were going to buy this. So somehow that information was sucked out of our system in such a way that some scammer could put this into an invoice that made it look like I needed to pay it. Now, again, much like everyone on the phone is saying, the first thing I did when I saw this was to call our consultant who was helping us make this purchase. And I said to him immediately, I've got an invoice for this. Is it real? And of course he said, no, it's not. But I bring it up just as another, phenomenal example of how information is available, somewhere, can't tell you where it's available, but good enough information that made me look at this and say, it could potentially be a legitimate invoice that I might have to pay. So again, I offer both of these simply as examples. I suspect that everybody on this call can tell me that they've got the same kind of examples that they've either received and deleted. I certainly get more than enough emails every day that I recognize as being trash, and I delete. These two happen to grab my attention and cause me to look a little bit longer. So that's just a sharing, much like the guy on the video, to let everybody just be alert to how easy it is to see one of these things. So let's go on to our next village person. I love saying village people. Nicole?
Thanks, Wendy. Hi. Yes. Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm the program director with SAIL, Sharing Active Independent Lives. And I'm here to share a bit more of how our village has been working on that pass it on mantra. So unfortunately, we've kind of grown accustomed to hearing about scams happening. And so our goal has turned to how can we share this with everybody else? So next slide. So a couple ways to start of how our office helps is we do try to host our own programs through local organizations. Better Business Bureau is one option. We try to do those annually for our members to attend to get either a refresher or to learn about the new things going on. On top of that, we do keep an eye on what other community organizations are offering these programs, and we'll share those as well. So just kind of continuing to spread the word, keep encouraging the education that's out there, because technology keeps changing and it's hard to keep up. We're also pretty fortunate here in Wisconsin that the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection developed this booklet that they've called the Senior Guide. I think we could maybe find another name, but it's called the Senior Guide, and it's about a 50-page book, 50, and it goes over a variety of scams that are known, what they look like, what to do if it happens to you, what to do if you fall victim to one. It's really in depth, and it's something that we give to all of our members as just kind of another reference material for them to use. And so I did share the link here. I know the slides are going to come out, so you can maybe check that out yourself. There is a PDF version on their website too. And then we also help remediate the situations. So if someone does come to us thinking that they have been part of a scam, we will help research, make sure that, yeah, that is a scam. We'll go over, we've even gone over to a house and helped in an immediate situation. One time we did have somebody who had given remote access to someone into the computer. So it was going over there right away, helping them just feel safe and supported, and getting the right people to help right away. We do have some tech service providers that we trust and ask to step in those kinds of situations. And then we also help with finding the appropriate place to report the scam. Next slide. So with our Pass It On mantra, it's regularly providing tips and reminders. So we make a point to share the scams that come through to us, whether it's from a member who had it happen to them, or if it's something that we're hearing going on within the community. For example, there was a scam going on with the local gas and electric company. And so wanting to spread that word before it could lead to anything more than that. And so with our continuously doing this, we've kind of generated this culture where members now know that our village is a place for them to go to if they ever hear of something or if something happens to them. And so on our end of it, it's been important for us to create kind of like a safe space, if you will, creating that, understanding that anyone that has a scam happen to them is a victim, and what it might feel like to be a victim. You heard it in the video with Wendy. You just feel embarrassed. You feel targeted. They might be feeling frustrated. And so remembering those when we are talking with one of our members, and kind of helping them just feel safe. And afterwards, we do ask if we can share the story. Some of them do share it. They may not include their name, but they share it from their point of view, and others ask us to just share it as an informational kind of thing. But we do our weekly emails. We do special emails for scams that come up, and we have our monthly newsletter that goes out to quite a few people. So next slide is one example that we just got last month, another very realistic type of email that came through. A member received it. She'd only ever used the Square for making a payment with sale that she remembers, and received this email, and was really frightened that something happened. Either we were hacked or somehow. So I've gone ahead and kind of just pulled out a few things that jumped out at me right away when she sent them, that helped me automatically feel strange about this email. The salutation says, "Hi, dear." Extra spaces between punctuation. And for me personally, really questioning whether Square actually has a requirement of how long for somebody to deliver goods. Just were a few of those things. The important part was the immediately just sensing something was wrong and going off of that sense versus clicking the links, which is what we've been hearing with Ari and Lisa as well. And so with that, we were able to research, see that this was actually kind of a common thing from a common scam, and Square had already set up a set email for people to forward these emails to, so that they could continue to log them and report them themselves as well. So through all of that research, we were able to help that member and kind of settle that there. And this last one that I have here is one that actually happened internally just last week within our office. It was, as you can see here, an email said to come from our executive director. What's important to know is that there are very few things in here that are not unusual. Our boss does email from her phone. We in our office do actually purchase gift cards to gift in to our members sometimes. And so it was something that some of our staff were in the middle of something. They were working really fast, and they saw this and they responded right away. And thankfully we were able to reach out and let them know that this was happening before anything went further. But the response came back asking them to buy gift cards. And had we not let them know, if there's potential that they may have gone forward and bought a gift card, we don't know. But if you notice here, I circled the email address is nowhere near to what our boss's email address would be, whether it's from her phone or from her computer. And also our organization, anything that comes externally, starts out saying caution, this email originated outside of the organization, which is another for us security feature. But it just goes to show that it can happen to all of us. We can all be caught up in working, and when something just seems so legitimate, it can happen to all of us. So thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing those stories and examples. It really goes to show everyone exactly how these scams work and how they can happen to anyone, like you all said. Before we get to people's questions, we're just going to share some free resources that can help you all in your villages and your communities to help other people avoid scams. The first one I want to talk about in terms of CFPB resources is called MoneySmart for older adults. And this is an awareness program we developed with the FDIC that allows you to identify scams. And if you do go out in the community and give scam prevention presentations yourself, or if you want to start doing it, this is a great guide for that. There's a resource guide for participants, and then there's an instructor guide complete with a PowerPoint that you can use about various scams. And this is available in English and in Spanish. All of our publications are available for free to order in bulk with free mailing at consumerfinance.gov/order. On the next slide, you'll see the fraud prevention placemats. I showed you examples of those with the online dating one and the online safety one. So these are things you can use as placemats underneath food with fraud prevention messages, or you can use them as handouts, or you can use them as posters. On the next slide, you'll see our managing someone else's money guides. These are guides for financial caregivers. Now, we talked a lot about scams by outside people, by strangers, but we also know that sometimes caregivers unfortunately can exploit their position in order to have elder financial exploitation happen. So these guides not only tell caregivers, financial caregivers, how to properly do their jobs if they are serving as power of attorney, guardian, or trustee, but they also tell financial caregivers how to recognize signs of financial exploitation and abuse and scams like the ones that we've talked about today. So all of these materials, again, are available at consumerfinance.gov/order. And this slide here shows our coronavirus website. It's a website, obviously, that was designed at the start of the pandemic in order to give people resources to recognize coronavirus-related scams and also financial protection needs. On the next slide, you'll see information about our housing insecurity digital toolkit. And I really want to bring this to everyone's attention because we just recently unleashed and published a emergency rental assistance finder, which allows you to go in and put in your city and state or zip code and then find out how to get emergency rental assistance in your area. So this can be a really helpful tool for people. There's a lot of rental assistance money available that people do not know about and have not yet applied for. So this is a great tool, and we have information on how to share this information in your community at consumerfinance.gov/COVID rent. Also, that coronavirus website that I showed earlier has information for people who are behind on their mortgages, because if you're behind on your mortgage or rent, then you could be susceptible to a whole lot of other scams because you need money in order to maintain your housing. So please do check those out, and you can check out all of our materials at consumerfinance.gov/older Americans. Like I said before, you can order them for free at consumerfinance.gov/order. And if you have any questions, we'll take them at the end, but you can also email me afterwards at the email address on this slide. And with that, I will hand it over to Ari to talk about some of the FTC's free resources that can also be helpful to you.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. I know we're going through these a little bit quicker because I want to make sure we have time for your questions. And like we said, we'll be able to provide these slides afterwards, so you'll be able to kind of look through them more thoroughly. But in terms of FTC resources, I first wanted to share our resource on coronavirus scams or avoiding coronavirus scams. You can get tips and resources on avoiding these scams at ftc.gov/coronavirus. It's also worth noting that we have these materials in several languages, so we really worked to make these resources more accessible, and so it's a good one to check out. Okay, I also wanted to talk briefly about our campaign for older adults, which is called Pass It On, which I know Nicole referenced and was also referenced in the video. Basically, the idea of the campaign is all around respecting people's lifetime of experience, and our short, to the point materials really help build on what you already know about scams, to give you all the information you need to start to have conversations around scams. And the information is good for anybody, but we hope it's especially useful for older adults, their families, and people who work with them. And we cover a few different topics, including identity theft, imposter scams, paying too much, and you've won scams. We have some great resources at the Pass It On website at ftc.gov/passiton, including articles, activities, PowerPoint presentations, so you can go out and share the message with your villages on these topics that are really great, ready to go. All of it's completely free. So I encourage you to check that out. I also wanted to take a quick second and talk about where you should be reporting the scams and frauds that we talked about today. So if you, spot any of these cyber scams, report it at reportfraud.ftc.gov. Tell us what happened. After you answer a few questions and submit your report, you'll get advice on what to do next. With the report number, if you give your email address, those instructions or that information will also be emailed to you. When you report, you're helping the FTC and our law enforcement partners build cases that stop scams and also alert others in your community about current frauds and scams. So please do that. And then quickly, some FTC resources for more on online safety advice. You can go to ftc.gov/onguardonline. For more about recent scams we're hearing about, you can check out ftc.gov/scams. And to order any of our free materials, which are free and ship free, like the CFPB materials, you can go to ftc.gov/bulk order. And lastly, if you want to stay connected to us, please sign up for our consumer alerts at ftc.gov/consumer alerts. And you can also like us on Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube. And with that, all right, we have just about 10 minutes for questions. Okay, I meant to take out the contact info. But here is my contact info and Lisa's contact info. And if you are looking to reach out to Wendy or Nicole, you feel free to reach out to either of us and we can connect you. So let me first check the chat.
I see one question that I think is directed to me, so I can start with that one while you're checking, Ari. And someone asked, what's the difference between Finra and Edgar, which is a site from the SEC, and they note that SEC is a government site. That's correct. The SEC is a government site, and it allows you, the Edgar search tool allows you to check for filings with the SEC. So the SEC is also a law enforcement agency, so it has that role as well. Whereas Finra is a nonprofit that is authorized by the government, authorized by Congress, but it is a nonprofit rather than a government agency. And they have a broker check tool that allows you to look up individual brokers and investors. So they're both good tools to check out an investment company or financial advisor before you start working with them. But the Finra one is a nonprofit and it's more looking at broker dealers, whereas the Edgar one is a government one and lets you actually check filings.
Okay, that was good. I see some good other questions. Let's see. What should we do if a pop-up does appear that won't go away? We're not going to offer technical advice here, unfortunately. But I think, what you would do in that situation is sort of along the lines of what we've been talking about, like going to a trusted source, right? Going to a friend or family member who might be tech savvy, or going to a trusted company that maybe a friend or family member recommends, who can help with that kind of thing. Just kind of not responding to a pop-up that is saying something bad about your computer and telling you to call that's the really big thing, like not reacting to that, and instead, seeking out, legitimate help and advice is really what we would advise there. Do you have anything to add, Lisa?
I think you hit the nail on the head that really just don't be lured in by the pop-up. Don't click on any links. Don't call any phone numbers. Just call someone who you know to be a legitimate source of tech support help. You can sometimes try to just turn off and on your computer. Sometimes it'll disappear, but as you saw in the video, that didn't work for that gentleman, so it won't always work. But calling, I know my parents sometimes call my cousin who's getting a PhD in computer science and ask his advice when they have, issues like that. So that's something, like Ari was saying, call a trusted friend or family member who is more knowledgeable about technology, or maybe even call your village, or AARP has some tech support services as well.
Great. All right, another question is, do you offer instruction on taking security steps like doing fingerprints? No.
I assume they mean like the fingerprints on the phone in order to open your phone.
Okay, like using biometrics. Lisa, do you have anything to add on that?
I do not have advice really on that
Okay.
particular topic, except for to be careful and, not let other people's fingerprints on your phone. Just use your own fingerprints.
Okay,
Can I
Nicole
add a
has
comment
something.
on that?
Sure.
Yeah, so we actually had it, we usually go to our tech tutor for interactions like that. And what we have been finding is that as you age, your skin kind of changes, and especially on your fingerprint because it's so thin. And we were having a lot of trouble with our members who were trying to use the fingerprint because the reader could not always read their fingerprint. And so our tech tutor has started to suggest that they stick with the codes or the facial recognition that's coming out too, because so many times we would get a call because someone got locked out because their fingerprint wasn't reading their thin skin anymore and it couldn't read the fingerprint. It's very interesting.
That is really interesting. That makes me think too, another tip that we've gotten from domestic violence advocates is just not to share your passwords, or like I said, don't put an extra fingerprint on your phone, especially if it's sort of a new love interest. I guess in this day and age, that can be kind of a sign of commitment that you're sharing passwords or fingerprints, but it's not recommended because then later on, if you break up, then the person still has access potentially to your data. So that's something else to keep in mind with fingerprints and passwords generally.
Yep, and multi-factor authentication is always, advised if you can turn that on, so that if someone else does have your password, then at least you need a code to get in or something in addition to the password. So it does add some added security. Let me see.
I see a question here about, is there a recommended site for stored passwords? I assume they're asking about password managers.
Password managers.
And as government employees, we can't recommend a particular site. But I don't know if Ari, if you have any thoughts on password managers generally that you think are worth sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely say that folks should, consider password managers. It can certainly make it easier for folks to, keep more complex passwords, which, we do advise. But like Lisa said, we don't have, a recommended one that we would send folks to. But, our general advice on kind of shopping around is to, talk to friends and family, get their advice, do some searches online, look at the company plus review plus scam plus complaint to kind of get some background info when you're looking for that kind of company, especially if you're, trusting them with lots of sensitive information like your passwords. I think there was one right before that. I'm having trouble with phone games. They're asking me to update the game. I updated one and got a bunch of stuff I didn't want. How do I tell if I should really update software when I get a pop-up? Okay. Lisa, do you have anything, or I assume?
Well, that could be something where, I mean, if you set your software to auto update, that could help avoid this situation, because it'll auto update with the legitimate updates, and then you can know to ignore the pop-ups.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I imagine you might also be able to like search for the app and see if there's an option like through the App Store or the Google Play Store to update it, because that would kind of be like the original source of where to do it, to see if you can update it there. Yeah, some of this stuff can be tricky for sure. I mean, you can always, contact the company directly if you're, have questions. If you feel like you're getting lots of stuff around updates and it doesn't seem to kind of like make sense, that could be one route. Okay, my concern about multi-factor authentication is I need to use Google Voice to call my phone when it is lost. Multi-factor locks me out at the only time I want to use it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think multi-factor is a trade-off. It is obviously recommended as a safety precaution. It does, cause another layer of protection, which is why people are hesitant to adopt it. But it is really a very important safety feature that most people who are in this space do recommend.
Yeah.
Despite the hassle factor. There is also Google Voice. There's recently the FTC just put out an alert about a Google Voice scam. So that's important to take a look at as well, about how a verification code scam with Google Voice works. So I would encourage people to check out that FTC blog if they haven't already.
Yeah, I mean, I will just add that the FTC a few years ago did some research on multi-factor authentication, where I think they did an experiment where they released like fake credit card numbers onto the dark web to kind of see how quickly they would get used, and they found that I think it was credit card numbers and like passwords and all that. And the accounts that were best protected were the ones with multi-factor authentication. And that is actually, there's a public, I think, paper around it online. If anyone's interested, I can send it to you. But so it's definitely likely to set a trade-off, but it definitely can add another layer of protection. Does encryption slow down emails? I'm on satellite and it isn't very fast as it is. I don't know if encryption slows down emails. I guess hypothetically, if it did, I guess it would again be a trade-off thing where, I think in many cases, you could, argue that the encryption is probably still desirable, right? So that folks can't see, when you're on your bank website or what have you. But I unfortunately don't have the answer to that. Lisa, do you have any intel on that?
No, Ari and I are both, I'm a lawyer by training and Ari is a policy person. So we are not technologists. I'm thinking next time we could have our technologist on the line with us to answer a lot of these great technology questions. But I think Ari's right about it's a trade-off with a lot of these protections. There may be inconveniences, but it's far more inconvenienced to lose a bunch of money to a scam or to have your identity stolen than it is to have your email slowed down or to be slowed down by multi-factor authentication. So even though we're all frustrated in the short term by these inconveniences, it is good to think of the long term and the protection they can provide from these scams, because nobody wants to lose a lot of money to cyber scams.
Okay, well, we're a little after 2, so I think we should probably go ahead and wrap up. But if folks have other questions, our emails are up here. Like I said, if you want to get in touch with Wendy or Nicole, you can reach out to us and we will put you in touch. But otherwise, we really appreciate you all coming. And we will have our next webinar in the winter. I think that one is going to be on National Consumer Protection Week. And we'll send that information out in the next few weeks. So thanks everyone for coming and have a great afternoon.